basically, this is the final part of the conference, and I'd firstly like to thank you all as attendees for your participation. I'm going to run through some other thanks and also give some reflections in response to a question that's been raised for this session as well. So first person to thank is Martin, who gave our keynote speech, and obviously he also wrote the book on which the themes of this conference have been based. Martin was one of the founders of our centre, but he's also remained actively involved and engaged in the work we do, and in particular this new programme, Science of Global Risk. So we're very grateful and appreciative of his time and efforts that he puts towards the centre. I'd like to thank our other speakers as well. I think there was a great set of presentations and discussions that followed them, but also that it's always interesting to see how these things can pull together. They can draw together across these different perspectives and disciplines in a way that is sort of coherent and is also enabling such fruitful discussions. Among those talks and discussions, I've pulled out a few points that I'll run through. I'm sorry, I realise that in some ways these sound a bit gloomy, but I will I'll keep going through them. So I draw some phrases directly from some of the talks and discussion of Anders, Sherry and Dee Dee, Doug, Jason and Joan. These include the problem of continuing with business as usual approaches, where almost everything we're doing worsens the situation. We're overshooting boundaries and safe thresholds, and we're very busy doing very many things wrong right now. The importance of fostering resilience in background times, so times in between crises, how optimism about the long future requires caution, how we need to evolve beyond growth imperatives and move away from the competitive mindset in order to address global issues, which we cannot solve with the mindset that caused them, that we need to change fundamental behaviours now and factor in the kind of people that we are. So I will come back to some final sort of reflection drawing on some of the talks towards the end, but I have some more thanks to give. So I'd like to thank the panel chairs who facilitated some great discussions, but I'd also say that it's not only the efforts they've made during the conference, they've put a lot of work in preparing alongside the speakers. I'd like to thank the artists. Tom McLean is the person we've seen drawing live, but there is also Jenny Leonard, Dave Bull and Paul Dickens who've been doing the cartoons for us. I think these have all been great for extra interactivity and engagement during the conference, but also they'll provide a good basis for other forms of outreach and engagement that we do with a wide range of audiences. And so it's great to have some sort of visual representations and simpler, more straightforward ways of communicating what we are discussing and involved in. I'd like to thank Colin Ramsey of Dragonlight Films. Colin's been doing the editing of the videos, but he's also been providing behind the scenes support throughout the conference sessions. And also in terms of behind the scenes, there's been a small organising committee of staff from the centre who've been working on the conference for well over a year now, as well as Claire Arnstein, whose name you'll have come across in some of the communications, and you'll have seen her as CSER support in some of the conversations in the chat. And also Annie Bacon, who's been sort of main administrative support for the conference. And again, you'll all have heard from her at various points, but she's also been the one running things behind the scenes throughout these conference sessions. So in terms of the question that was posted that I noticed earlier, sorry if you've posted any since then, I've not had a chance to sort of look at them. But this question was looking towards recommendations for how a young person or researcher could stay connected within with the global catastrophic risk field after the conference. So the first thing to say is, yeah, just keep engaged with and follow the various groups. And there is an increasing number of groups now and research groups and institutions who are doing work in this area. They have things like newsletters and podcasts. They will have public events. They are studying and visiting opportunities across a range of these institutions. But I'd like to also broaden the question out a bit, because I think if there's a question about looking perhaps at the career paths or other ways you might contribute to the field in the longer term, I think actually there's some important things here that have been highlighted across the talks in the conference that show there's such a breadth of understanding of knowledge, skills and experience needed to address some of these challenges that there are many paths to addressing global risks. So if it's research that you want to go into, then you might focus on existential and global catastrophic risks as a particular class of risks. You might focus on specific areas of risk and specific ways of responding to those risks. You might focus on the systems and interconnections involved in those risks and mitigations. Or you might focus on specific approaches and methodologies that can be useful in this area, and foresight's been mentioned a few times as one of those approaches. But there are also the contributions that can be made outside of career paths, and I think, again, this has been picked up in some of the talks. But things like thinking through community engagement. So how do you engage with various communities? Do you help to build awareness among those communities and form networks? But also there can be actions to understand and build local resilience. So to work within your physically local community as well. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, some of the key points I ran through were a bit more perhaps on the depressing side. So I wanted to close by going back to some things that Sherry Wells Jensen said in her talk, because I think she picked up on this very well. And I am directly quoting her words here. We are all participating in this thing. We are all working on the problem. The problems are big, the problems are serious, the problems might kill us, but we are working on them and we're doing that together, and that matters. And I couldn't find better words myself. So thank you all, and good night.